I'm gonna talk into the microphone, although I've been told that maybe it doesn't amplify, so tell me if I'm talking too quietly or too loudly, or does it seem okay? Perfect. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate with me. I'm really excited for this is the publication of my first book of poems. And so, welcome to Malvern Books. I've asked 5 of my favorite poets to read tonight to help send the book out into the world, and I'm really excited about the lineup. We're each going to read for, I don't know, a briefish amount of time. If it's helpful for you to know, I think the whole thing will take about an hour. Sometimes it's nice to know that ahead of time. There are some refreshments back there, so grab stuff if you want. Books are for sale at a discount, $10 each tonight if you want a copy of the book. And afterwards, we're going to head to the wheel on MLK for cocktails. If cocktails and more talk about poetry interest you, everybody's welcome to join. I'm so happy to introduce Sequoia Maner first, who's just co-edited a must-have collection, Revisiting the Elegy in the Black Lives Matter Era, which is out from Routledge just this month. And there's a reading to celebrate its publication March 3rd at Bookwoman, which you should all go to, and you should order that book. I'm really excited about it. The first time I heard Sequoia read her poetry, it was one of those readings where she started to read, and it was a contrapuntal poem, which was an elegy for Trayvon Martin. And it was just one of those things where like sort of the room space changed when she started to read it, just really quietly startling. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised by that. I already knew Sequoia as a brilliant scholar, somebody who you go to get the news about poems from. But it was startling nonetheless, and I've been excited by her poetry ever since. So I'm happy to tell you the news about Sequoia's poems, their technical virtuosity, the way they're constantly pursuing the ways that bodies occupy forms, are transformed by those forms, transform those forms in return. Just really visceral and stunning work. So, Sequoia Maner.
I mean, that is indicative of Chad Bennett. Yeah. So gracious, so lovely. I just want to say that I'm so happy for you and proud of you. I think that you are a beautiful person, and you've always been so supportive of me in my journey as a poet, and you've always been genuinely and authentically interested in my development and in my health and happiness as a human. And you can't fake that. And I love you dearly for your support. And as I teach, I guess for folks in the room who don't know, we're sharing this little intimate moment, right? But I met Chad as a graduate student. He was my professor. And before he actually ever taught me, we had a little workshop together. I don't know if you remember this. It was with C.S. Giscombe and Gabby Cavacaresi. And we had this little prompt, don't remember the prompt, and it was like you get 10 minutes to write, and after 10 minutes, we're gonna share our poems. And Chad offered forth this poem after 10 minutes that was the most beautiful, distilled, layered, complex, complete poem that I've ever seen written in 10 minutes. And I realized that he's a genius. So I'm really excited for this book. I'm just going to read a few poems. This first one I hand chose for you. I was thinking about what you've taught me about poetry and how to return to some moments that might be difficult but also necessary in thinking about how we become poets. So this one is called On Coming Out at 17, and it starts with a little epigraph from The Color Purple, and this is Celie speaking, and she says, "The first time I got the full sight of Shug Avery's long black body with its black plum nipples that looked like her mouth, I thought I had turned into a man." When on the verge of ripening into plums, some girls dream of sunsets and of other girls. Some girls dream of bursting beneath darkening sky. Some girls dream of the body as book while tasting the bitter of their own skins when on the verge of ripening into plums, plucked to be eaten or preserved with gentle pressure and a slight twist. Some girls dream of bursting beneath darkening sky, split to open center, an amaranthine flesh, pruned to the undamaged parts, when on the verge of ripening into plums, in the middle of concrete cities, where fruit coats pavement and smoke shadows the moon, some girls dream of bursting beneath darkening sky. Water her roots, cut back her branches, turn her full-faced to sun, when on the verge of ripening into plums, some girls dream of bursting. You guys are very kind for clapping after the poems. Some audiences are very quiet. This next poem I chose because I remember we were at a reading and I was very nervous and I was in the middle of writing a new poem and I thought about reading it for the crowd but pulled back at the last moment, and I was talking to Chad afterwards and I was like, yeah, I'm working on this series about Muhammad Ali, and he had just passed away, and I was thinking about what a force he was and how much I loved him and how I wish that he could speak something into this very turbulent age that we were living in. I feel like he would have had very precise and necessary advice for young people who are trying to organize in the wake of police violence. And Chad said, I want to read that poem. So this is a part of that poem. I was struggling with it. It is now 12 rounds. I'm not going to read all 12 rounds. I'll read a couple of them. This is for Muhammad Ali. 1. I crossed water, crossed rights and lefts, crossed all borders of myth and man. I am worthy of all praise, worthy of all praise. In crossing from Louisville to Holy Land, I defied logic, defied supremacy, defied the white matter of memory. I am worthy of all praise, worthy of all praise. In defiance of nation, I blackened blood sport, blackened visages, blackened butterflies adrift in breeze. I am worthy of all praise, worthy of all praise. In black-tongued broadcast, I forced fortune, forced fights, forced them to call me by my name, Ali. I am worthy of all praise, worthy of all praise. 2. Emmett gone nearly 10 years now, and you are reminded of how the submerged and revealed body will float despite waiting, and how those folk were lynched because Jack proved that marked men can startle like prismatic color through the static of radio, and how those Asiatic people in Vietnam might find a vision of Brother Malcolm sparking liberation to be universal truth. That men who dare cultivate their butterfly philosophies and spread their butterfly wings bear the distinctive hum of the bruised and burning sting nestled deep in tender meat, and how a bomb will tear the delicate bodies of 4 little black girls, like a bomb tears the delicate bodies of 4 little yellow girls too. For surely when history pendulates a steady rhythm, the greatest of great nations will sink and plunge in the shadow of the diving bee. 3. Emmett gone nearly 60 years now, and you are reminded of how the broken spine remains the impossible indicator of brokenness despite its breaking, and how the spectacle of a splayed and summer-sunned body is nothing more than the symbol re-symbolized, and how you've witnessed this before, this record of not conclusive enough to convict, this record of not conclusive enough to conclude conclusions, this record a watering of grief wetting wings too heavy for escape. And if the thundering is not independent declaration called free, then wings will regenerate when oiled between bristles that rise along its scarlet underside, so brittle and so light. For under the weight of bulleted blows, the body drops, like a body drops under the weight of bulleted blows. And surely the backward boomerang of history is a dare. 4. Sometimes I wonder myself if it's too late. I wonder how hard the blow will be when this body that houses my spirit, this body that punishes and is punished, will bend betrayal. And oh, how the body bends. I got a date with destiny. I got to get right with God. So, I have this one very distinct memory. I'll read just 2 more poems. I have a very distinct memory in Chad's class, Poetic Theory, which opened up a lot of avenues for me. But all along, I had been feeling sort of like an outsider when thinking about the kinds of poetry that my classmates were interested in. And I came to Chad with this, and he just encouraged me, do what you want to do. Study what you want to study. It is valuable. You are valuable. The work is important. And because of that, I wrote this paper. It took me to my first graduate conference. It was a paper about Evie Shockley. Evie Shockley was in the audience at this conference. Crazy. Evie Shockley, I can now call her a friend, right? And I'm just thinking about how you were at the beginning of so many of my beginnings. And Evie Shockley, she writes these beautiful poems, and I really like her concrete poetry, poems that take the shape of something. And I've been writing this poem that I don't really know how to read, but it's taken the shape of something. So it looks like this, if you can see. And this is a poem inspired by Harriet Jacobs. And Harriet Jacobs was an enslaved Black woman who, for 7 years, hid in the little crawl space of an attic, if you can see, this little corner of an attic, for 7 years to escape the brutality of her master and to ensure her children's freedom. And I often think about how remarkable she is, and she called that little space the loophole of retreat. So in this loophole, I imagine that she's saying, "Beloved, I was dreaming of freedom again, dreaming of the beginning and end of everything, dreaming of the water of life and pure, unadulterated freedom. Light, fleecy clouds floating over a dark, troubled sea. Compelled by a mother's instincts and the razor held to my throat. Compelled by fiends who bear the shape of men and spring like tigers in stormy, terrific ways, I planned, and I planned. I was desperate with mother's pride and deliberate calculation. Knowing the impassable gulf, I made a headlong plunge. I resolved never to be conquered." Okay, I'll just close with one more poem. Try to lighten it up a little bit. This is called How I Came to Remember My Name. If desire is held in the body, is slippery and of flesh, as memory and murk, then second sight begets second chances. If desire is dream and sensation, then relinquish the body. Call me by my name. If desire refuses suppression, is always already regret, then lick salt, lick the corners of my mouth and spit copper into the night. If desire indicates individuation, then stalk and plume, spill and stammer. If desire demands pleasure, then pluck 1,000 strings, soak in a bath of chamomile and lavender, touch me on my inside parts. If desire is possession and dispossession, then bite your tongue and bury it. If desire activates the body, then shimmer, vibrate, smell, and hum. If desire makes object of subject, then I have forgotten my name, Sequoia, of water and root, of burl and bark. I house life, I nest families. Thank you.